This is the Bob Davis Podcast YouTube channel. And in this episode, we are going to talk about the beautiful spring to summer reveal here in northern Wisconsin, because it's really something. And as you know, I have been traveling in most of the videos that I've done. So, California, Nevada, Arizona, all over the mountains. So the Pacific Coast Highway from San Diego up to LA, from LA all the way up to the Redwood Forests. And my favorite part of the trip, really, obviously the PCH is a game changer, but the traveling on Route 50 East all the way from Sacramento to the middle of Kansas and then shooting up to Wisconsin. So these have all been movement episodes. This is going to be a little bit different because I come up to Wisconsin and I stay on this property all summer. And I'm right down on the lake. I have a fire every night. It is really an idyllic existence, to tell you the truth. And people say, why do you sleep in your truck when you can sleep in a cabin? And I'm like, why wouldn't I? Because I'm down here with a fire every night. I've got the boathouse, and I have this incredible physical experience of going from spring to summer. And spring, when I got here, was really winter for me. It was cold, it was wet, it was rainy, and I spent a lot of time in the truck, or I spent a lot of time in town at the restaurant or whatever to get out of the rain and the cold. And then it revealed this verdant, beautiful, green, warm, blue sky environment that at times is really mind-blowing how beautiful it is. It's not the Pacific Coast Highway, it's not the Rocky Mountains, it's not the Nevada deserts or the Arizona deserts. It's not that same kind of beauty, but it is breathtaking. It's the beauty of the loons on the lake, or the eagles flying overhead, or it is the beautiful scenes when you look through the trees. And when I got here initially, there was no leaves, there was no green grass, everything was gray, everything was brown, and since then it has just bloomed. And sometimes in Wisconsin we get late springs and we get early springs, and I usually get here late April, early May. I've lived up here for years. I grew up in Chicago and spent the same amount of time up here in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And many times I have been up to this property and we put the dock in. My late father-in-law was just adamant about getting the dock in before Memorial Day, if he could, and certainly on Memorial Day. And so I've spent many a Saturday and Sunday putting in this extensive dock that we had with my brothers-in-law and friends, and my father-in-law putting this dock in, and there would be ice floating in the lake. And people don't believe me, but my brother-in-law will certainly tell you that he remembers ice floating in the lake, and I know that my father-in-law did. So you'd be out there in waders, and the water was really cold, and the only reason you didn't freeze to death is because you had waders on until you got out towards the deeper water, and then that water would go through the waders. And he called that getting a little drink. And we would just be freezing out there. But as soon as you got the water in the waders, you'd warm up. So I'm just saying that spring is no joke in this part of the country, and sometimes it's beautiful, and sometimes it just takes forever to warm up. I mean, I've spent Memorial Day weekends that were we were just basically in the cabin because it was impossible to be outside. And yet people run to this season's change. And so in this episode, really it's kind of allegorical in the sense that we're stationary, but we're going to travel through a season. And I'm struck at how people will run to change when it involves the change of seasons, especially in the north. You're very excited about spring and summer coming. You get ready, you put the docks out, you put the tables out, you get ready to, you get the fire pit ready, you do all the things so that you can enjoy that brief summer that we have up here. And there's never any hesitation about jumping into that change. There's no lamenting. Obviously, in the fall, once the great part of fall is over, you lament the coldness coming in. But even that in December is welcome. It's interesting how we run toward change when it comes to the seasons, but when it comes to change in our lives, which is inevitable, we resist and we fight and we don't rush toward change, and then we don't understand. And I speak from experience. Why it's so difficult. And there's all these things written, and people write all these books, and there's people on Instagram and YouTube doing videos about how change is difficult and you've got to work at it and everything else. And yet, if you think of it like a seasonal change like we're having, it's easy. You just rush toward it because it's something that you want. So if we can think of change as inevitable, the seasons are going to change. Summer will eventually wane, fall will come, winter will come, spring will come, and summer will come again. So we don't question if we can stop it. We can't stop summer. We can't stop day into night and night into day. So we accept that, but we don't accept change in our lives. And so I want to talk about that a little bit in this this episode of the Bob Davis Podcast here on the Bob Davis Podcast YouTube channel. So let's get into it. Early spring to late spring in Lake Country, Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin. This is a place that, as you know, if you lived here for any length of time, you would know that winter, it literally feels like the North Pole. And it feels as though as winter progresses, that summer will never come again, but it does, inevitably. And that transition season, of course, is late winter into early spring, and then early spring into late spring, and ultimately to summer. As you know, I have been traveling, and I'm traveling, and when I travel, I'm in my own element. I love to travel, so I've been all over the Southwestern United States in the last few months, from October through to early April. Done some videos on YouTube and some podcasts about the experience on the Pacific Coast Highway, and of course on Route 50. If you want to see video from that stuff, just visit the YouTube channel. You'll see it. Of course, you can listen to those podcasts here at thebobdavispodcast.com. But in the summer, I come to Wisconsin, and I come down to what we call the flat. That's the shoreline, and I stay down on the lake. And I'm the only person that does this up here at this little piece of family land. Nobody else has anything on the lakeshore. And I've often talked about how my cousin-in-law, about a quarter of a mile away, he comes down and he has his fire at night. I have my fire at night. And, of course, I stay down here in my rig, and I always sleep in the rig. I can't sleep in a house. It's just can't be in a house, because it's always just open the door and walk out into nature. And this experience from early spring to late spring is quite an amazing metamorphosis or reveal. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. I'm just saying that being stationary for me is a different experience from travel. So what we're going to do with this particular situation is what you're seeing is, and what you're hearing about is the early spring to late spring, early summer metamorphosis. When I get here in early April, generally speaking, it is barren, it is wet, it is, I wouldn't call it inhospitable, because when you think of this place in the winter, then this is, warm compared to January, of course. Literally 60, 70 degrees warmer, even though it's 50, right? And I get to watch this if I'm lucky, I get to watch this change from early spring to the beginning of summer. This is when the trees that are just budding this time of year, so in early April, will transition into beautiful green trees. And fields which laid fallow all winter will be prepared for planting, which will start to take place in late April and early May. So here we live, lake people, so to speak, live right next to these many big family farms that are around our area. Now, there are places, resort places, where it's all resort. There's no farms because the farms have all been turned into, housing developments or whatever. Or it's a big lake like Lake Geneva or Lake Minnetonka in Minnesota, where people around the lake, and that's that. And here, there's houses around the lake, but then when you get away from the lake, you get into farm fields. So it's a really cool, I think it's great that you have farm people, you have townies, and you have these lake people that are here. And as you travel around and you see the muddy roads, you see the barren little logging roads in and out of the forest. Here you see the fallow fields. There is, of course, a longing for when it's changing and how it's going to change, and then the speculation about what kind of summer we're going to have. And this is the topic of conversation that we often have when we're out. Around the time of the fishing opener, people start bringing their RVs out. They start going to the bars in preparation for the fishing the next day for the fishing opener, and that sort of heralds the beginning of spring because obviously the ice is out on the lake. But it's still too early, generally speaking, to put the docks in, to prepare the boats or the canoes or the ski lifts for the jet skis, and the boats and everything are, generally speaking, still in the sheds, and it's still kind of a barren lakeshore. And at the same time, there is a physical change going on, and it usually kind of starts with the weather. So you get some dramatic skies, you get some dramatic sunsets before the leaves even come out. And when things are still barren, you get these incredible sunrises and sunsets and moonlit nights that are 45 degrees or 55 degrees. So it's kind of inviting, but not really, because it's really not warm yet. And I am reminded, and I'll say again what I said at the beginning of this episode. The idea that we don't fight seasons change. We run toward the change of seasons. There are people who love fall. There are people who love early winter. There are people who love winter. There are people who love summer. And when we go through these transitions to fall into winter or spring into summer, we rush toward it. We don't think twice about it. And yet in our lives, then people resist change. And you can have change for lots of reasons. Get a new job, have a baby, get fired, have to move. Somebody loses their job, you're married, and somebody loses their job, you got to move. And so you have to make a lot of changes, and we don't think of change as being natural in life. But we were discussing this the other day, and the fact is that, life is not a straight line through the forest. Life is a meandering process, and there's good days and bad days, and good years and bad years, and things happen, and you have to deal with it. That's called change, and it is a natural process. It's just that we're living inside of our bodies. We're flying this rocket ship known as the human body, and we're living in society, and we're living this experience, and we fight change. We don't run toward change like we do when we start talking about how great it's going to be when the days warm up and the trees finish budding and the leaves come out. We think, what did I do to deserve this? Or we think, how am I going to get out of this? Or how do I stop this change from happening? That's why I think change is so difficult. But in this world, in the world of nature, the trees, the bugs, the creatures, things seem to happen automatically because everything is on instinct. You know, the trees do what they do, the animals do what they do, the insects do what they do. Certain insects come out early and then they go away. One of the things that's happening right now is all these mosquitoes are coming out, and people will always tell you, well, I can't go out there because there's too many mosquitoes. But what happens is, in late May, the dragonflies come out. And the dragonflies, especially along the lakeshore, fly over the water and they eat all the mosquitoes. So if you're down here on the lakeshore, eventually there comes a day where you wake up and you're like, wow, where's all the mosquitoes? They're out there still, but they're not as plentiful as they were at the beginning of the year, and because the dragonflies have eaten them all. And I didn't know that. I just noticed, I watched them and what they were doing, and then I figured out that what they were doing is eating the mosquitoes. So we welcome the arrival of the dragonflies, but they're not out yet. And then there's the June bugs that turn into some other creature. I don't know what they turn into. I've forgotten. And the logging roads through the forest that are muddy, and then they get hard and then dusty, and all of the things that you used, let's say, for landmarks when you look through the forest, you can't see them anymore. Because as the trees start to come out, and as this reveal begins to happen, or this metamorphosis begins to happen, then we get into spring. Real spring. And that's when people start getting everything ready. So pretty soon the docks go out, and the chairs go out, and the wind either dies down or becomes very mild, and the days are long, and the sun is high, and it feels great. And as I may have said, I don't remember, being stationary is hard for me. When I first started doing Nomad life in 2020, I thought it was, you were supposed to just travel all the time. And I did. And then, without making a complex story out of it, during COVID and during the inflation period, we sat still, and we didn't want to spend money, and we didn't want to spend money on fuel in particular, so we sat in the deserts. This year, I decided I was going to hit the road again and travel, and I was a little bit surprised at how tired I was when I finally got here. And I remembered, you do get tired when you're traveling constantly, because you're 2 days here, 1 day there, a week here, a week there. Sometimes it's truck stops, sometimes it's campgrounds, and you're constantly on the move, and your days are filled with, and in my case, my days are filled with shooting video, recording sound, trying to figure out what I'm going to talk about, and making content, creating content while I am moving. So when I sit still, I'm kind of like a fish out of water. I don't know what to do, and that's why I chose this opportunity to record this incredible metamorphosis, because then what happens is that the landscape around me changes, and it's moving and changing, but I'm stationary. And the thing that's interesting about that is, so if we decide we want to live a safe life, and we want everything just so. We're going to find out that change is going to come to that well-ordered life no matter what we do. And that we have to find a way to accept change and deal with change and run toward change the way we do when it comes to seasons. I don't know if I've said it or not, but sometimes change is foisted upon us. Somebody loses a job and they have to get another job, or something happens to them physically, there's a sickness or there is some issue, and we have to deal with that change, and we fight it. And I know that from experience because I fought change many times. Usually it's internal. I came up in the communications business and there's constant change. So you wouldn't know. If you looked at me, you would think that I just embrace change and that's the way it is. It's only because I've dealt with a lot of change in my life that I guess I figured out a way to cope with it. I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to cope with it. I know there's the way that the forest copes with it. I know there's a way that nature copes with it. It just does what it does. Trees grow up and they fall down and they have to be cut up and used for firewood, for example. Fields have to be prepared to be planted. They look different in July than they do in May and April, obviously. And so it is with people. We just think that we're in control. I mean, do these trees, for example, do they think they're in control, or do they just do what they do? They just do what they do. The animals and the creatures, same thing. They aren't obsessed with, am I enjoying my life? Am I enjoying this change that's happening? What do I do? And how am I going to do what I do? And why am I not having this wonderful experience? I think if I can say, well, I'm just going to do this and go with it and not resist, maybe it would be a lot easier. And I've done it. I mean, I've had to do that. I don't particularly like doing that. So when I'm not constantly moving, because that's my normal modus operandi, and I'm just here, well, then I kind of get a little crazy. So I start looking around for, well, what am I going to do? What content am I going to create on this? And so I've hit on this idea of going around to all my basic reference points and checking all the reference points to see how the seasons are progressing. The season is progressing. Because you go from this pre-Memorial Day, the water's cold. Sometimes there's ice on the water. We used to put the docks in, as I mentioned, and it was brutal. Sometimes it was brutal. Sometimes it was quite pleasant, but most of the time in early May, it was brutal. I can remember rushing up to the cabin and jumping in the shower just to get warm, because we were frozen to the bone from putting the dock in. And this is in May. Now, if you live in California, you live in Arizona, by May, it's 100 degrees. I mean, it's 100 degrees in Oklahoma and Texas right now in mid-May, which is a little early. But here, that's not how it is. And I want to be able to be connected to that. So I'm going around to these little reference points, the fields, the forest, the logging road, the shoreline, and just kind of experiencing the change in these different spots and loving the lakefront. And I'm going to restate that in general, I'm the only one doing this. Everybody else is up in a cabin. First of all, there's not that many people up here. So I'm here, my sister-in-law and her boyfriend are here, my mother-in-law is here. That's generally, it's just the 4 or 5 of us that are up here. So there's not that many people here right now. And it's really weird when summer comes and people descend on this and suddenly the lake is full of boats and people are here and everyone's visiting. Right now, it's very quiet. The lake is empty for the most part. Maybe there's a couple of boats out there. It's very peaceful. And it's a great place to watch this change. The clouds change. The wind shifts. And suddenly the green comes in. And it becomes very thick. And you can't even see through this little forest anymore. And the roads get dusty. And it's pleasant to sit in the boathouse and just hear the sound of the wind and experience the sound of the wind in the trees and the various animals. Probably one of my favorite times of the day is 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning when the fire's finally burning down and I'm just sitting out there. And sometimes the water is literally like glass. It'll be like that from sundown all the way through the night until the wind picks up in the morning. This incredible, gorgeous, flat lake. And I'm in the boathouse because it's shielded from the wind. You can occasionally the wind gets in the microphone, but you're able to hear, especially the wind in the trees. Occasionally, I watch these videos on YouTube of people who have had quote-unquote near-death experiences. And one of the things one of the guys said, he was talking about his experience, and he said, in heaven there's no wind. And I think that he was talking about and relating to the very real process of life and the wind that's caused by the sun and the moon and the tides and all those things. They don't have that in heaven because they're not in physical life form. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but it is kind of a cool story. But to me, the wind in the trees is really one of my favorite sounds. And being able to sit in the boathouse and just hear this creaking and things moving around reminds me that in actual life, we are constantly moving. We are constantly changing. We're aging. Our kids are growing up. Our parents live to old age, and then, obviously the inevitable happens. You're constantly dealing with change. And of course, the last couple of years, I've dealt with, a number of people who've passed away, not the least of which was my mother. And it's always struck me as so strange that they're here. All their stuff is here. They live their lives. They have the things, the clothes they wear, the cars they drive, the books they read, whatever. And then suddenly they're gone and all their stuff is still here. It's just so strange. But the idea of going to heaven, if you're lucky, and not experiencing this wind, I can't imagine that that's true. I question that. And then, as we progress through the early spring, suddenly everything just opens up, and everything becomes green, and the fields get planted, and the farmers aren't available to have brunch on Sunday because they're out working. And there's a bustle to the spring. People start coming up to the lake. They start getting their boats out. The docks go in, as I mentioned. The boats go in, as I mentioned. And slowly but surely, on the weekends, the lakes get populated and people show up. So for those of us who are here, and we don't move around, this is quite a process in early spring. Not to mention the arrival of the blossoms and the arrival of the green leaves on the trees, and the roads get dusty, as I said, and the storms start to come, and the sunsets are warmer and brighter, and the moon comes out, and you get these incredible full moons overnight that are just mind-blowing. I get to have the fires. I get to experience all of this. I'm very lucky to have this. And, this will give way to what I hope will be an incredible summer, And again, here's another thing, because we're inundated with so many pontificators telling us what's going to happen. Whether it's the people with the tarot cards and the psychics, or it's the financial guys, or the political guys, or the commentators who seem to know everything, but they really don't. They're going to tell us what's going to happen. But when you watch these seasons change, it just happens. And if there was nobody here, it would still happen. If everyone left, the seasons would still change, and the trees and the animals and the grass and everything else would do its thing. And it's not forced. Things fight and yearn to live. Trees grow, leaves change. This process takes place, but we're not trying to predict. Now we have conversations about, is it going to be a warm summer or is it going to be a cold summer? I don't know, but this will give way to a beautiful summer, which the leaves will be heavy. They will change color. The grass will get darker. The leaves will get darker. The days will get longer until they start getting shorter. July and August, the 4th of July will come. The kids will go back to school. And then it will be fall. And this whole thing will still be here. And it will still go through all these changes. And it doesn't resist those changes. It can't. And so I think that the moral of the story is basically, you can't predict the future. You can't predict what's going to happen. There's going to be good things and bad things that happen. I guess bad things. I mean, sometimes bad things turn out to be good things. And good things turn out to be bad things, right? So some things are going to happen, and there's nothing we can do about it. So it's understanding what do you do about it? Well, you put the dock in, you mow the lawn, you get things ready so you can enjoy the weather while you can. You just enjoy it. You allow it to you be happy in this environment. That's what you do. But to resist it and to fight it, especially when it's a natural part of life, whether it's nature or whether it's our own lives, things that happen because they're going to happen. Well, I don't know. I don't know what to say. So that's what I've been thinking about as I watch this process. And you know me, I get wacky, but I kind of think it's a cool way to look at it. It's a tremendous reveal. And it's a great lesson on how to handle change. And I'll just say one more thing. My father-in-law was a farmer, and he had a little chair on the porch at his house up here, and he used to sit there and just watch. He would watch the fields. He would watch the trees, and he was always very connected to nature. He's one of the first people that said to me, and I didn't know this. I mean, when I was young. He's one of the first people that would say to me, you see the sun where it is now, and in early summer he would point that out, and he'd say, no, that's going to move. And I mean, I didn't even know that happened. He was like, that's going to move all through the sky because it's going to change. It's whatever it is. It's declination or whatever it is. And he was always amazed by that. But as a farmer, deeply connected to the land because you had to figure out when to plant and when to do all those things. Modern life, in a way, we're disconnected from all that. So we don't feel the ebb and flow. We think we're in charge of the ebb and flow, but we're not. We think we're in charge of the natural processes, but we're not. Sometimes, when I'm doing my doom scrolling and I see what's going on, I think, this is insane. This is just insane. And I know other people do too. But being connected with the natural part of these processes is so great. And he, to remember him, he didn't fight it. He worked on the things that he could change, that he had control of. He didn't worry about things he had no control over. And he did it very naturally. I have to work at that. Which is much to my chagrin. I really have to work at letting go and just, I hate to say it, but going with the flow. So we do live in a time of really what can only be described as pretty extreme change. We are constantly confronted with things we didn't expect to have happen. And I don't think that's a political statement. I don't do politics, so I'm not really trying to make a political statement. I just can tell you that I've lived long enough to know that this is one of those periods where we're in flux. And I keep abreast of what's going on in the news, and I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube. I do a lot of doom scrolling on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok and all the places. And I'm often shocked when I hear all of these predictions about what's going to happen, what this is going to cause happen, or what the result is going to be from whatever it is that we're doing. And we forget that we play the game to find out what the outcome will be. So it's hard to describe what we're living through as a kind of game. But in a way, it is a game. It's easy to look at things that are happening, and when you're only hearing the negatives, make conclusions about how awful things are and how bad it's going to get. And then what happens if it doesn't get that bad? Could it get worse? Of course, things can always get worse. But things can also always get better. And we don't always know what the positive implications are. So when we watch the metamorphosis, the revealing of spring to summer, it's predictable. We know that spring and summer are going to come. We know those trees are going to turn green. We know that there's going to be warmer days. We kind of know the future. We just don't know what path it's going to take in this particular season. But we accept it. And we run toward it because we're excited about summer coming. I want to just do a quick shout out to thank people who have been watching these videos, the shorts, and also the addition of the video podcasts here on YouTube. Thank you so much for subscribing, and thanks for commenting. I've gotten some really great comments recently, and I really appreciate those sort of insightful comments about travel and the experience of travel. So thank you for those, and thanks for liking and doing all the things. What I've been doing recently is these longer form videos. The subscriptions are ticking up, and the viewership is ticking up, and more of my viewers are watching this stuff on television, which is really amazing to me. So if you're watching on YouTube TV, thank you. And thanks for subscribing to the Bob Davis Podcasts here on YouTube and also at the BobDavisPodcast.com. Thank you for the donations, and I'll see you in the next podcast. Bye-bye.